And joining me now is Chris Bedford, senior editor at the Federalist and co-founder of rightforge.com. Chris, is Build Back Better going to happen, yes or no?
I have a steak dinner bet that it's not going to happen with another reporter here in D.C. It's been going for the last couple of months. And here's my reasoning for that, why I made that bet is you've seen it really drop out of the news. A lot of the different publications that cover all the going-ons about D.C., like Playbook, have really become rather quiet on this as the Democrats have stopped their PR push. The reason for that is because while originally this was connected to other legislation that they wanted to pass, the progressives were able to load this up with all of the goodies that they wanted. That first part of this deal already passed, and anyone who covers Washington for a long time starts to realize that when someone says, if you do this, then I'll do the other thing later, well, the thing that was supposed to happen later basically never happens. We're coming up against a December deadline, and then at the end of the year deadline, and then after that, they've got the new year, and politicians in D.C. love to say, well, I can't do anything because it's an election year. The problem for the American people is that every other year is an election year. The Republicans are really pushing back on this, not just because of the spending tag, but because of the complete change it's going to make and how the government interacts with American citizens from birth until death. And that's enough to make people like Manchin and Sinema really hesitant on this deal, and it's enough to kill it.
Speaking of Manchin, AP News reporting that he has told Democrats to choose their top priorities in the bill and is critical of the fact that many of the measures are temporary, limiting the price tag.
Well, many of the things are temporary, but there's no such thing as a temporary government program. We still have people in the country, for example, who came from war-torn areas where they were in trouble 20, 30 years ago. This is the kind of thing that goes on in D.C. Government programs live forever. Ronald Reagan made a lot of great jokes about that. So Manchin's correct to say that there's going to be a sunset provision, because when you give out something for free, when the government acts like Santa Claus, well, then when people start to come around in 3 years, 5 years and say, all right, this is supposed to end, they end up in this awkward political position of having to take a benefit from someone who's gotten used to it, who likes that. It makes that awkward for them, and no one in D.C. ever wants to make the hard decisions to cut the money, so these programs go on forever.
And I'm sure you're aware of this, Build Back Better, and this is a concern for anyone in our audience. The Build Back Better, several faith leaders are very concerned, warning that the bill could put faith-based preschools out of business, basically by forcing them to become federal recipients of money. Here, let me read this paragraph here for you. The bill's provisions attach new, quote, new compliance obligations that would interfere with providers protected rights under Title VII and Title IX regarding curricula or teaching sex-specific programs such as separate boys or girls schools or classes, and preferences for employing individuals who share the provider's religious beliefs. That's according to the USCCB. Are faith-based schools, preschools, this is for parents and for the free 2 years of preschool and universal K. Are you concerned about that as well? Are they trying to squeeze faith-based out?
This is something that's been a long problem that's been long ignored by the right because people didn't quite realize what was going on. In the 50s, the 60s, the 40s, the 30s, the 70s, there was a vibrant alternative education system in the United States that was put on by Catholic schools. It was paid for by parishes. It was paid for by parents. It was outside of government, and because of that, they were able to be a much more moral education. That has been squeezed already. For every charter school that opens in this country, a Catholic school goes under because now there's a government-controlled, government-paid-for alternative. It gets people away from the teachers' unions, yes, which some conservatives cheer, but at the end of the day, it hurts the Catholic schools because now there's an alternative that costs no money. When the government now wants to get involved in pre-K and an earlier childhood training for people, that gives a free alternative, but it doesn't. It says it's free, but it comes with all the tendrils of control. That control includes the gender aspects. That control includes a lot of things that are very anti-religion. The only religion allowed in the state schools is anti-religion, atheism and wokeism. No Christianity allowed. So when you insert that in there, you start to compete with the faith-based schools that are reliant on private donations and individual charity. Then you destroy them.
Yeah, and it's buried in the bill. You can go to page, I don't know what it's on, but that thing is so long, and that little sentence in there can change the scope of everything. Let me move on here. We've seen an uptick in vandalism and destruction of religious symbols at the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception here in D.C. A man, this is terrible, just hammers away at the statue of Mary. And then earlier this year, you wrote about churches across Canada that had been set ablaze. What more can you tell us tonight, or inform us at least, update us on these acts of aggression?
There's a horrible act of aggression against Mary, a classic act of iconoclasm, chiseling off her hands, chiseling the nose off of her face, and chiseling off her crown. It's an intentionally anti-Christian action. just like the intentionally anti-Christian actions that we saw in Canada. The government in Canada was basically actively allowing this to happen by saying, well, this crime that happened 100 years ago that's not really a crime that we're actually responsible for. We understand people being mad at Catholics as opposed to the government. That allowed them to get away with some of the blame that they deserved. But here we see in the United States, these crimes are not taken seriously against Christians. Whether it's something as silly as lighting a Christmas tree on fire or lighting a Christian symbol on fire at the Fox News headquarters and getting out that very night as if this wasn't a crime targeting Christians, or this much more serious crime of attacking Our Lady, the police don't take them seriously because Christians aren't considered a protected class. And in this new woke religion, we're just part of the oppression as opposed to the people who are out there on the front lines helping the poor, helping the immigrants, helping mothers, helping children, and trying to make this world a more God-fearing place.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking to see, especially with the video of that statue. I don't know if they caught that guy or not, but, some things are just inexplicable. Chris, thank you very much for your time and your analysis tonight.
Thank you.